Hello, friends, and welcome to this special impromptu Zoom event where we are recording a little live because we were trying to go live on Facebook, on Instagram, and it didn't work for some weird reason. Our sound was cutting out, and our sign language skills are not that great. But I'm Ocean Robbins, co-founder and CEO of Food Revolution Network, and I am thrilled to be here on a historic day with Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson, one of my dear friends, and the author of Maintain, the Three Simple Shifts That Turn Temporary Weight Loss into Lasting Food Freedom, which is out today. And it's also a historic day because tomorrow is the launch of the 2026 Food Revolution Summit docuseries, which is the largest gathering of healthy food lovers on Earth in 2026. And it's starting tomorrow. So we're both celebrating big moments when a lot of people are mobilizing around transformational ideas. And so, Susan, I've got to ask you, because we're starting with your book, which is out today, Maintain. What are the core principles that help us move off of the diet roller coaster into sustainable and healthy, right-sized relationships with our bodies and with food?
Yeah, there's three principles, Ocean. In terms of the deep psychological principles, there's a few others that have to do with neuroscience and biology, but what I've found is that those are necessary for even just getting the initial weight loss piece right. But in terms of maintaining it, you've got to become devoted, resourced, and liberated. And those are the three shifts. And devoted people in the Food Revolution Network might relate to because, when you become vegetarian, you become devoted to a different way of eating. If you become vegan, you become devoted to a different way of eating. You're not going to go on a cruise and say, well, I'll have the ribeye because, you're not going to stay vegetarian on a cruise, right? That would be ridiculous. And in a similar way, to maintain weight loss long term, you've got to be devoted to a new way of eating, a new way of orienting to food, not something that you're trying for a short time and then falling off the wagon and then restarting on January 1st. So being
Yeah.
devoted is the opposite of diet mentality, I guess. It's what people mean when they say diets don't work, you have to change your lifestyle. What they mean is you have to be devoted to a new way of eating and living. But that's only the first shift. That's only the first identity shift. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk about those. But first, I just want to say I think it's so important because, it's not our aspirations that shape destiny so much as our habits. It's what we do day in and day out, all the steps we take. I mean, you can look in a new direction and take a couple steps that way, and you'll get 2 steps worth of direction that way, right? But it's
Yeah.
what you do long term on a new path and the continuity that changes everything. And so devoted is like that fierce commitment to staying on the track, right? And then, but that's not enough by itself because
It's not because the next thing that will come up is you'll be tempted to eat over your emotions, over stress, over a celebratory occasion, over boredom, over all the things that you used to eat over before. And so that's why the second shift is to become resourced. You've got to really develop new skills. And now it's beyond habits. It's more around being someone who does their inner work. So, this is where you've got to address the childhood trauma. You've got to really develop practices like
mm,
meditation or a gratitude practice, really up level your human connection and your touch and, the things that bring nourishment beyond, sitting and eating a pint of ice cream, in front of a Netflix series.
I mean, I'm thinking there's really two sides to this resource from my perspective, and one, of course, is that you've got food has been used as a form of self-medication in a sense,
Yeah.
which for a lot of people it is. And by the way, for people who are anorexic, sometimes absence of food is also a form of numbing and
That's right.
self-medication, right?
In their brain, the reinforcement is literally flipped. So they
Right.
get the reinforcement from not eating. Exactly.
So just about any time that somebody is consistently saying like eating out in a way that doesn't align with their own best interests or what they think they should be doing, there's a deeper underlying need that's being met through that process. And
Yeah.
unless you find another way of meeting that need, you're just setting yourself up for failure to take away the crutch and fall, right? So the question is, how do you get resource so that you actually have those needs met in other ways? And I think the other side of resource that we come to a lot in our work is this notion that we tend to become a lot like the people we surround ourselves with. So how do you get the resource of support, peer support, friendship, people that bring you back on track when you fall and bring out the best in you? We all have people in our lives that when we're around them, we feel better. We feel like the best version of ourselves. And we all have people that we're just like, no matter, I always feel awkward and bumbly in front of this person, you know? So how do we
Yeah.
get resourced as in surrounding ourselves with the resources, with the things that make us feel like the best version of ourselves,
Yeah.
whether it's the authors and the books or the podcasts or the human beings or whatever it is, that will help you. And we know that we tend to slip when we're having a tough time. I mean, I don't know anybody who's an alcoholic who says, "Oh yeah, I only binge when I'm feeling good." You know, Usually when people start binging in ways that really feel out of alignment with their well-being, it's when they're having a hard time, right? It's when they're struggling. And the same is true with food, which is why I think it's so important to get resourced so that you have the resources that you need to lift you up and to sustain you and to support you. So I love that part. And then what's the third?
Being liberated. You might think that someone with a chronic lifelong weight problem is eager to walk past the food and the weight issue and leave it behind forever, but actually
Yeah.
I help people lose all their excess weight all the time and then watch them subtly take the problem back into their own domain. And that used to puzzle me deeply, but then I realized that actually if you've been spending 50, 60, 70% of your life focus on your food, your weight, your exercise, your attempts to manage this problem. And now being liberated means that, all the things you're going to need to do to support your healthy habits are really only going to take 15 to 20% of your bandwidth. Now suddenly you've got all this prime real estate in your thoughts and focus and intention that you're reclaiming. That might actually be scary. It's like the
Yeah.
vacuum there is a big deal. And if you don't have enough hobbies, interests, passions, if you have a rocky marriage that scares you, a career that you never really launched, there could be actually a perverse familiarity in going back to perseverating on the last 5 or 10 pounds or regaining all the weight. So you have to lose it all again. That's a big endeavor. So people literally keep themselves from being liberated if they're not conscious of
Mm.
finding other ways to fill up their life.
Wow, that's so fascinating that there's so much energy liberated when people are not weighted down literally and figuratively by toxic food relationships.
Yeah,
That you actually it's a problem if you don't know how to work with that and move it in constructive directions. And I'm reminded of that saying that pain pushes and vision pulls. What we find
hmm
a lot in our work that people reverse cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes, with healthy diet and lifestyle, and they are lit up and they are on the path. And then stunningly, sometimes once those conditions go away after some period of time, they backslide again because
Yeah,
they were motivated by pain, by fear. And once they lost the pain and fear because their condition reversed, they actually backslid because they didn't have the traction towards what I think of as vision, which maybe is tied to
yeah.
what you're saying is liberated, which is like, what is it all for? I mean, there's that saying the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. And for so many of
Mm.
us, that second day never really comes. But
hmm
ultimately, when you're liberated, it seems to me you're able to do what you were born to do. You're able to live your best life and make your contributions. And that is not something to take for granted. It's something to invest in deeply, is what I
Yeah.
hear you saying.
Yeah, totally. And I wonder if those folks who, reverse cardiovascular disease, say, would backslide if they were immersed in a community of people who'd reversed cardiovascular disease or were trying. They were
Yeah.
able to help newbies who are coming in who are scared about the heart attack that they just had, and they were able to reassure them and console them. And then, they were in that same community where people were celebrating the deep inner work they were doing, the way that they were flourishing, being liberated from cardiovascular disease. There's so much richness on a path of doing your inner work and being in community with other people who used to have a common issue. I mean, I am a 12 stepper, and that's the sort of model of life that I subscribe to is, figure out a solution to your biggest problem and then spend a lot of the rest of your life helping other people to get free as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So the book is out today
It
and
is.
it's available wherever good books are sold.
Yep.
And it's an amazing book. And I think this is such a breakthrough because you really are calling for an end to the diet roller coasters. And
Yeah.
we see so much of this, and a lot of people have lost, hundreds of pounds of weight over their life and then
That's right.
gained it back again. And that's so dispiriting, but it's also really unhealthy. Can
Hmm.
you can you talk a little bit about, we don't need a lecture on why that's bad because there's a lot of pain there for a lot of people, but it's important to know why we've just got to end that cycle. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the harm that comes from it?
Well, we do, and right now, actually, there's a cultural war happening where it feels like uh, the two camps have dug in, but I think both are missing the boat in certain important ways, right? The first camp was the let's get the weight off diet camp that,
Hmm.
emerged in the 1970s and 80s, diet culture, back then it was low fat,
Hmm.
and jazzercise, right? Just to be, stereotypical. And then, this backlash that happened that was really important with the health at every size movement
Hmm.
and the body positivity movement, and we got bigger mannequins and we got more realistic models, but in that camp you hear a lot of messages of it doesn't matter if you're overweight, it doesn't matter if you're living with obesity. What matters is that you stop the weight cycling, which is
Hmm.
unhealthy, and that you love yourself and that you don't allow yourself to be
Yeah.
defined as a number, which is incredibly important. But the middle ground there is the point of maintenance, right?
Hmm.
Where to get to a place where you're not trying to gain or lose weight anymore, to be devoted, resourced, and liberated to a healthy lifestyle that is right for you, that's self-chosen, and to move past this struggle. It's the most important thing. And for some people, that is going to involve losing some weight, and they want to do it for the right reasons, and there should be nothing wrong with that. And I think we all, of course, need to recognize that the scientific literature is very clear that carrying a lot of excess weight is not physically healthy, right? And there should be no shaming involved. But we've got these GLP-1 medications now that do make it somewhat easier for some people to lose their weight. They're not an answer for everybody. There's some side effects
Hmm.
involved. Some people can't tolerate them. But what we find is that they don't actually pharmacologically address the issues of maintenance, because if you're assisted in not eating as much excess food, you still need to do the inner work. The inner
Hmm.
work remains to be done to be someone who can be devoted, resourced, and liberated. And we don't see GLP-1s getting most people all the way down to the weight they're hoping to
Hmm.
get to and helping them stay there long term. So they're best paired with an approach like the one in this book, Maintain. I think there's thousands of books on weight loss, and I think this is one of maybe two or three books on weight loss maintenance, shockingly. There's very, very few.
Wow. And you're coming from somebody who knows what you're talking about because you've done it for decades now, and you've also
Yeah.
helped thousands of people, many thousands in your community, also not just to lose a bunch of weight, but to sustain and even continue to optimize their weight over time.
That's
And
right.
that's the credentials that you're bringing with a program that is actually more effective over time than GLP-1 medications, according to published peer-reviewed medical research. There's no other so-called diet or weight loss program out there that can say that. So remarkably effective. And I just want to say that so folks know that Susan knows what she's talking about. Like,
Yeah.
and this isn't just theory. This is super real, lived experience practice. And now you're making it available to everybody through this simple and powerful book. So thank you for that. And for those who don't know, Susan is featured in the upcoming Food Revolution Summit docu-series, which airs starting tomorrow. So we've got 8 episodes, one per day for 8 days from April 22nd to 29th. Susan will be on in multiple of those episodes, but is especially featured in episode 6, which is where we focus on strength and metabolism and how to be your healthiest, most vibrant self. And also, every day of the summit, there's another expert interview that we feature. Actually, 3 of them where we go in depth with people. And so on day 6, we have Susan's as the #1 most featured expert interview. So you can get the full conversation between us about critical topics around the neuroscience of weight loss there. But the entire summit docuseries is broader than weight. It's on the food revolution and how we can apply the latest learnings of nutritional science to optimize health and vitality. So I just want to make sure folks know it's coming up tomorrow. It's going to be an epic event. This is going to be the largest gathering of healthy food lovers of 2026. It's all virtual. Hundreds of thousands of people are already signed up. And we get to talk about this year's biggest breakthroughs. I mean, we've been doing this every year for about 15 years, but there's so much that's getting learned right now, just in the last year. I mean, some stunning new developments in nutritional research that are kind of important. I mean, we've known for a long time that we need to eat more vegetables and less processed junk. That's not new. But there are some new things that really matter.
Absolutely. And Ocean, I think your docuseries is incredible and you keep finding ways to make it better. And the fact that it's all new every year with only the cutting edge research is so exciting. I have to say that when you invite me to be on it, which has happened a few times now, it's about the biggest honor. It's one of the biggest honors that I receive all year long. I always just tingle, and I know we're super close. And when you were talking earlier about finding people who lift you up, I was just thinking, you're one of my people. You
Yeah.
you're one of
Yeah.
my people.
Likewise.
But the docuseries is just so high quality. So I'm very excited that it's starting tomorrow, and I'm super proud to be featured in episode 6 and throughout so many episodes.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. One thing I'll just give folks a teaser about that really struck me in doing the interviews for this year's summit. We're learning more and more how personalized nutrition is, that we aren't all
Mm.
the same. And one of the big things we're learning is that seniors have some different nutritional needs than younger folks do. And particularly postmenopausal women have some different nutritional needs than younger women do. And as we're learning that, we're realizing a lot of sort of generic health advice has kind of missed the boat for some of these populations. And, generations ago, not people didn't live that long. But now we do. And so what's going to help us thrive in our 70s and 80s and 90s really matters to a lot of people nowadays. And it hasn't gotten enough attention, in my view, as a distinct group, right? And so part of what we're learning, for example, let me just talk about protein for a second. Like, there's a lot of talk about protein these days, and a lot of the classic plant-based community has just come back to the World Health Organization and most major nutritional bodies around the world, which recommend zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And that's a good baseline for most people. But what we've learned is that folks over the age of 60 need a bit more. And postmenopausal women need a bit more. And what's more, plant proteins are a little bit less bioavailable than animal proteins. So again, a little bit more. You put all that together, and it's probably the case that seniors should be getting, 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, which is actually a 25 to 50% increase over younger folks and the sort of generic advice we've been hearing. And that's particularly true if they're plant-based. So now we're talking about maybe 1.2. And plant-based eaters tend to eat less calories overall, right? Because there's more water and more fiber, both of which fill us up a little bit and give us satiety sooner, typically. So when you put all that together, you could actually end up having a less than optimal amount of protein, which can show up through loss of energy or bone loss, especially for postmenopausal women. And so what we're learning now is it's not hard to get your protein up that much from plants. It just does take some consciousness and thought and intention. And here's the other thing that I think is important is that statistically, people who get more of their protein from plants versus animals tend to live longer. They tend to have lower rates of cardiovascular disease and chronic inflammation in their bodies. So the key thing here is plant protein for the win, right? And that's something we really want to emphasize. And we'll be talking about that more and more in the times to come, including in this year's Food Revolution Summit docuseries.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I've been learning a lot about that. I just did a heavy weightlifting session just now, and I was also looking at some mycelium protein powder yesterday that someone sent me a link to, and I thought, oh, look at that, protein from mushrooms. Okay, interesting. So yeah, I can't wait to see that whole episode, Ocean.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, friends, it's been great hanging out with you, and thank you for joining us. And again, Maintain is available now. Get your copy. And by the way, folks who get copies in the first week, it helps get the book on the bestseller list. So if you're a fan of Susan's, get a bunch of copies because you know how important this work is. You probably want to spread the word. And bestseller is a great way to make that happen. So, and join us in the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. You can go to, we have a special link for fans of Susan Peirce Thompson. It's foodrevolution.org/Susan. So again, that's foodrevolution.org/Susan, and that'll get you registered. Enter your name and email, and you can join in the summit completely for free for the next 8 days. I promise you will not regret it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ocean. This has been so fun.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.